Welcome to the Practice Podcast, a show created by lawyers to help lawyers in life and business without all the complicated lawyer language. Let's welcome Bast Amron founders and your hosts, Jeff Bast and Brett Amron.
Hi, Jeff.
Brett,
How are you?
I'm fantastic. We're happy to be in the same room as you.
Well, of course you are.
We
are back in studio.
We have not been in studio for at least 6 weeks.
Yeah, I know it's been a long time. I've missed you and I've missed this place.
Happy summer.
Happy summer.
We are recording this in August. It's really hard to believe that the summer is
in Miami,
slowly coming to an end,
which doubles as a steam room. If you've ever been in Miami in August, you know what I'm talking about.
Love it. Come on, the water is still great. That's the ocean water.
Ah, yes, fair enough.
Welcome back. Happy to be here.
Welcome back, Nelson. Good to see you too.
Brett,
yeah.
Who's someone famous you would like to meet, dead or alive?
Do I go with the super intellectual answer? You know, I always debate that. You know what I mean? Or do I give one of those?
I think with these questions you give, you throw out a couple. You don't have to pick one. It's a multiple choice.
I'd love to go back in history, and just sit with somebody, did remarkable things back in history. Just talk about what they did back then. You know what I mean? I'd love to do that.
You might be headed right to my number.
Is that like Hamilton or Washington or somebody like that? Ben Franklin.
That would be mine.
Abe Lincoln. Just, God, man, how awesome would it be to sit down with people like that? And by the way, I'm not saying that they're perfect. I'm sure they were flawed in some respect and whatever, but to sit with them during those times, just remarkable, right?
No,
I think would be really cool.
And to get a sense of what they think about these times.
Yeah. Oh, so you're talking about like a Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Yes, let's bring it back, yes.
It would be Jeff and Brett's Excellent Adventure.
Let's bring
movie rights.
Socrates Johnson.
I can feel it.
Yeah, those are good. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I like it. Jimi Hendrix.
Hendrix would be cool.
I think you can go history, music, sports. There's probably lots of different genres you could.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love, Eric Clapton would be super cool to sit down and talk to. And Barack Obama, would be cool to talk to. Then there's a few others, current people that, I'd like to.
Cool. I like the idea of a historical figure and bringing them back.
Yeah.
Bill and Ted's underrated concept.
Excellent adventure.
Anyway, so what we're going to talk about today is, so we have in our firm monthly attorney lunches, and each month a different attorney is the host. And what that means is they sort of run the meeting, and it's a very loose meeting. Loose meaning it's not formal. You're not expected to, come in with. But I mean, we do circulate. There's topics. So we usually circulate the topics in advance, and the host picks the topics. And usually there's some combination of a business topic and a
lifestyle
and a life topic. Mm-hmm. And so we were thinking we would sort of touch on maybe one or two of those. But the most recent one that comes to mind for me was the topic was that everyone's really busy, mm-hmm. and especially like the last couple months in the firm, we've been super busy. There's been a very hectic deposition schedule in a couple of cases, and it's just been a very active month. Everyone's billing a lot of hours. And so the question was, what do you do for self-care to manage your way through these challenging periods? And I think that's a question that is probably relevant to all lawyers, like this topic of self-care, I think is something that one is overlooked, and two, I just don't think there's enough attention. I don't think you can give that topic enough attention because everyone talks about, being a lawyer is stressful, whatever, and mm-hmm. Managing it, but usually the conversation is how do you deal with the stress? But this is a different one. It's not how do you deal with the stress, but how do you.
Yeah, it's related, right? I mean, it's related to dealing with stress. It's related to dealing with your health, whether it be mental, physical, a combination of those two. And because not work life can be stressful, but life can be stressful, right? Like outside of work can also be stressful. And so how are you caring for yourself? And by the way, these are things that 10, 20, 30 years ago, nobody talked about, right? I remember being a young lawyer. We were talking about this in our meeting when some of the younger lawyers looked at you and me and said, well, what did you used to do? Not what you do today, but what did you use, for self-care self-care, and it was not.
Your answer about used to.
Yeah, it was honestly, it was, I just, I was talking about this with Lauren, and it was like, we used to work all the time and then go and watch TV. We hang out with our dog, walk with the dog, but I didn't exercise back then like I do now. I didn't, so there was, I certainly don't do.
You did not exercise back then?
I did not, no. So, I was like, there was a period of time where I didn't. I did in college. I did when I was younger. I played sports and whatever. But then there was a period of time in life when, it just took a back seat and I didn't. And, we worked, as I said, we always look back and say that where did the time go? We didn't think we had time, but boy, we didn't know how much time we really had, right? No kids. And we weren't running businesses and, right?
That's true.
And you have no idea how you do it all now.
It reminds me of a children's book that we used to read to our kids called A Squash and a Squeeze. And it was about a woman who felt like her house was too small. And then she asked for advice, and the guy said, bring your cow into the house. And it was crowded. And then he said, she said, it's still small. And he said, bring the chickens in. Like, he keeps going until the house is just jammed with animals. And he says, now let everyone out. And suddenly the house is big. So it's kind of the same thing. Concept. Like I agree with that. We felt like we had no time. Yeah. And then you have kids and you really have no time.
Right, but you get it all done. And you actually get more done.
Right. Which is, I think, we saw this with our kids, especially when they were in high school. Mm-hmm. I think at least I learned, and you probably as well, that the busier they were with sports and after school programs and whatever extracurriculars, the busier they were, the more efficient they became. They just learned to get stuff done. It's that, I forget the name of it, but that theory that work takes the amount of time allocated. If you give, 4 hours to do a project, you're going to take 4 hours. But if you only have 1 hour, you'll get it done in that 1 hour. So, I agree. But what I'm really surprised about that whole thing is that you didn't exercise. And when you say that, do you mean that I view you as like an athletic guy? And so I assume that you've always been athletic, and you and I don't know each other our whole lives. So were you always athletic, and then when you became a busy lawyer, you let yourself go, and then you got back to it, or did you just find this later in life?
No, I was athletic. As a kid, I played sports, right? I was always out. I was always doing stuff. I was playing sports. In college, and, I would play intramural sports. I would work out. I was doing all that stuff. In law school, I still did some, but, less. So I still did. I still played intramural sports in law school and whatever. But when you graduate and you become a lawyer and, you're working your butt off, I fell off.
Yeah.
And I didn't get back to where I am today. I started doing some stuff here and there, but nothing ever stuck. I didn't really start doing this until I was probably 34. I had 2 kids, young kids. I had probably just started my own firm.
That's when you started running?
Well, really running like I am now. Yeah. Now it's 17 years. It's a long time. I'm old now. But
surprised. I thought I figured you were always a runner.
I was never a distance runner. I was actually a sprinter in high school. Yeah. I hated distance running. So anyway.
By the way, Nelson's now focused because Nelson and Brett have a long-standing running competition.
That's right. That's right. Anyway, but I got back because I wasn't feeling well. And so that goes to the self-care, and I was I just didn't feel good. I was tired all the time. I just didn't feel good. That's when I got into, I got to do something. So I started moving and running. I got into actually, eating differently. I started reading some books and got into it. And then I just really took off. I started doing triathlons, and because I had friends who were willing to do it with me. And so then it just sort of took off from there. Now it's like I can't live without it. Right. I can't, I just got to the point where if I miss a day, I feel bad.
Right. So when you say you weren't feeling good, do you mean physically or emotionally?
Probably. There was probably some mental component, of course, but physically is what sort of jumped me into it.
No, I absolutely subscribe to that. And I've always been since high school, a workout person, a gym rat, if you will, through high school, college, law school, even when I was working, I remember at Holland at Night, I'm still shocked that I did this. I would work out at lunch. During lunch, there was a gym in the building.
Yeah.
I would go and I guess I showered. God, I hope I showered.
All of his colleagues are calling him right now. He did not.
Can you please confirm that I showered? I must have showered.
Yeah.
I do remember one day working out so hard
Yeah.
I guess maybe I hadn't eaten, that I was like literally in the bathroom throwing up, one day. But anyway, the point is, I think your routine changes through your life.
Of course.
You fit in the time. Like I was not a morning guy at all. The working out in the morning for me was much later or more recent, probably like you, the last 20 years or so. But yeah, I worked out at lunch and through most of my career, but I would work late. I was I would work. I worked with a guy who, shout out to Craig Rasile, who was a late, the guy was there till 10 o'clock at night on a regular basis, just a night guy. And so I needed to be around like in the evenings.
Right,
and also I didn't mind, before I didn't have a wife or kids in those days. So I didn't mind working on on typical Friday, I would work till like 11 or 10 o'clock because we were going out and my friends would be meeting at my apartment at midnight to go out.
Well, and we didn't have smartphones back then either.
Yeah, that was
right. And so you couldn't stay connected. You had to be at the office.
Nobody was calling you to say, "Where are you?"
or emailing you or texting you or So you had to be there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think you use the word evolve, right? I think we all evolve. You evolve throughout your life. And so there are things that and by the way, when you're younger, your bodies can adapt to, being treated poorly, I suppose. It's not great for you. I don't suggest it. I do think people should take care of themselves even earlier than perhaps you or I did, but you can bounce back from it. Whereas you get older, less so, right? Yeah. So, but I would say that, you evolve, throughout your life. Like there are things that I do now that I wouldn't even contemplate in terms of self-care that I wouldn't even contemplate back then,
Such as?
Doing cold plunge. That wasn't even a thing back then, right?
Yeah, these things that society has advanced.
No, but by the way, but even listening to self-care like podcast or yoga or Pilates or doing any of that stuff.
Right.
That going from I want a massage. I go for a massage. I don't do that very often, but I'll do it. I would have said back then, no, I don't need it,
even if it was offered to you. Right?
Yeah.
But I also think you didn't have, or at least I didn't have a link. I never made a link between exercise and mental health.
No.
But it's now obvious to me that it's always been there.
Sure.
And that's probably how I managed the stress back in those days. Mm-hmm. Even though I don't think I was conscious of it. Oh, I need to go work out.
Yeah. I
worked out and that was my release.
Yeah.
I've also always been a good sleeper. So
yeah, diving to sleep. I go to sleep. Sometimes I don't stay asleep.
You go to sleep, right?
I don't stay asleep so well. But
I used to, back in the day before I was married, I would have my alarm clock on the other side of the room. I would get out of my bed, walk across the room, hit snooze, and get back in bed and go back to sleep for 10 minutes. And I would do that 8 times. Yeah. And I now tell my kids that one of the worst possible habits.
It's snoozing.
Snoozing.
The worst.
Why are we doing that? It's a terrible habit. Like you should train yourself to go to sleep and stay asleep. And when you're ready to get up, wake up.
There's like a science behind it. I think I read this somewhere that
it's good or
it's terrible for you.
Yeah, it has to be.
Because if you snooze, right, it's like 8 or 9 minutes depending on what you're using. And your body, if you go back to sleep, like if it really takes like 20 minutes
before it gets into full.
So like you're breaking that again,
right,
with a snooze, and you keep doing that. It's horrible for you. I was talking to Lauren about this. Like there's this new gadget that you can buy. You can put your phone in it. Mm-hmm. Have you seen this yet? Mm-hmm. So for people who have the same problem you had, which is I walk across the room, I turn the phone, and I go back to bed, turn the alarm off, is you put the phone in this device, and when it starts to go off, it bounces all over the room, and it forces you to get out of bed and chase it down.
I like that.
To turn it off.
I like that, except if you have animals.
Yeah, it'll freak the animal.
Dog or cat would not.
So I thought about getting it for one or more of my children. But yes, it is. So going back to self-care, I mean, what do you do? How do you focus on that today? And how, you talked about you worked out back then, in the middle of the day, and that obviously helped. But, how has that evolved for you?
I think for me, and this sounds, colloquial or whatever, cheesy, I really subscribe to the work hard, play hard, motto. And I believe that I try really hard not to mix the two, which is not always possible, but I it's kind of like why I would work late on Friday nights. The reason I didn't want to work weekends, and I almost never worked weekends, and I worked in an environment where most people did.
Right.
And I billed a ton of hours back in those days. I was a 2150 guy consistently, and I almost never worked weekends. I'd rather work. It's like kind of like you're doing a long distance drive. I'd rather fire through and get it done.
Yeah.
So my view was same thing. Like with even now when I'm traveling for pleasure and I have something I need to do work wise, I try to get it done on the get it done on the plane. I will stay. I'm working because otherwise I'm away on this trip and I got this thing hanging over. I'm carrying it around with me.
Yeah,
it's like I'm going to a Jazz Fest or whatever, and I have a backpack and there's a brief in it. It's like I'm carrying that brief around with me until I get it done. And so I'd rather get them done. So I try to work hard, play hard, but now I've become, as I've aged, more of a morning person. I've realized the value of morning I've gone through like the stages. I would work out at lunch, and then eventually I transitioned to night. I would work out at night, and there were just too many things got in the way.
Yeah.
And then now I've transitioned to morning, and for me, still, like it turns out, like this conversation, we're just talking about physical exercise, which I get. To me, is like
we're going to get into the mental stuff too.
But they are so connected.
Well, of course.
But the physical is so important. Like moving your body, it does for me, and I think for everyone. But
it's for
I can't give advice to everyone. I don't have any expertise.
No, movement.
What we're talking about is us.
We're not talking about like swimming versus running. Right. You do
moving
my
body is just so important, and I just do it in the morning. And I feel better. Like on the days when I come here after swimming, I just feel good.
Yeah.
I feel great, on those days. And I swim during the week twice a week. So on those days, today was one of those days, I just come in.
You're glowing right now.
I'm happy.
Yeah, look at
I'm happy, but I physically feel good because I've moved my body. I've been in the outdoors, exercised. I think to circle back, I think today's generation and the attorneys, in our attorney lunch, I mean, the fact that we're even having that conversation, this conversation about self-care is to me an advance because we weren't talking about self-care in the attorney's lunch when I was, in my firm.
Right. Assuming there was an attorn's lunch. But we
did have attorney's lunch.
Okay. But you weren't talking about that. You were talking about casework. You were talking about.
It was really, they were unscripted. They were much, it was more like just getting people together because you have people on multiple floors or whatever.
So you talked about the physical. We know you swim and you do all that stuff. And, the running and we hike, we travel, we do that stuff. But what about non-physical stuff that helps too?
Yeah. I have a meditation practice, which I've introduced in the office. And I think, you probably do it as well. I meditate on a regular basis and we do it Mondays after the huddle. We have a little group that meets in the conference room right there and we meditate after. And it's just such a great way to clear your mind and also set yourself up for focus for the day. But it's also it's been instrumental in my life in helping me manage stress. Like I don't know, I guess I've been doing it. I have to figure that out, probably 10 years now, like meditating. And I have learned to compartmentalize my emotions through meditation so that, like when someone cuts me off in traffic, I get mad for a second, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to let that.
I'm not going to flip the bird.
Yeah, it's not me.
Right.
I'm experiencing anger. Right. It's allowed me to identify a feeling or a thought or something. And also, and same thing with sleep, when I'm going to bed, the tendency is to think about that case or that meeting or that stressful thing you have coming up the next day or something that happened earlier in the day that I could have handled differently. And my meditation practice has helped me just learn to put it away and just focus on my breath or something else when I'm going to sleep.
So it's interesting. I do meditate periodically. I don't do it as consistently as you do. And what I've found is for me, meditation doesn't have the same impact for me. And actually, so I went to this clinic up in Orlando with my forum and, there was a bunch of testing going on. And one of the things they tested was like your brain waves and all this stuff. Whether I believe it or not, I don't know. But it came out that actually meditation for me is not as impactful as like movement.
Okay.
And I do find that for me, just going out, I'm not talking about going and like hard charging on a run or like some other exercise. I'm talking about just go for a walk outside, quiet. No headphones, no nothing.
Well, that is your meditation.
And that
That's your form of meditation.
Exactly. And so rather than sitting still and doing meditation, for me, it's actually being outside and just, going for a walk. Right. Or I'll just lay down on the ground on my back, close my eyes. And I know that some would say that's a form of meditation.
Why is this not meditation?
But it is not like focus on your breath and blah, blah, blah. Right. It's just not your traditional, what you would think is meditation or playing something in the background and focusing on it. It is just me saying, okay, I'm going to lay down and center, and I do that and I'm done. Or I go for a walk, and that's helpful.
I think a lot of people who try meditation are looking for some like spiritual awakening, expecting something to happen.
Yeah, it's not
and that is the complete opposite.
Correct.
It's that nothing is going to happen. And just, to me, it's like, I'm giving myself this 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever it is, 5 minutes.
Whatever you can do to help yourself get centered, whatever that is, and to whatever works for you, works for you. Yeah,
Jolly has a very similar, she takes the dog on a walk and her morning routine. Yeah. She takes the dog to the water, to the bay, and the two of them. And it's funny, you see our dog, I swear my dog's meditating. She's sitting there and they're both just looking out at the water. Yeah. And for whatever it is, 10, 15, sometimes 30 minutes, whatever, they're just sitting there. And it's like her space.
That's great.
And we've talked about a meditation, and she's like, no, that is my meditation. And
exactly.
Right, it is.
Exactly.
By the way, you said this thing about you had a test about your brain.
Yeah. I do have one.
The way you introduced it.
I do have one.
Oh, that's right. We have confirmation.
Confirmation, yeah.
But the way you introduced it, you said something like, whether I believe it.
No, whether the testing, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know how, it seemed fairly accurate.
You have doubt.
Yeah, I don't know enough. I don't know enough about the science behind the test, and I don't know enough. Yeah. It was introduced to us. It was something kind of added on to the physical component, so we just did it as like the test of brain, and it seemed pretty accurate. But I don't know the science. I'm not going to verify it and say I 100% believe in it. I don't know enough to know that, but it did. Tell me something that I sort of already knew, and that is when I sit in a forced sort of setting that is hey, let's meditate, that doesn't work for me.
But you do it like at work. You sit in a forced setting and like you're able to read a brief and focus on that brief.
No, I know that, but I'm just telling you the meditation doesn't have the same impact for me as like Jaleh, like going out for a walk or with the dogs or by myself or what. Yeah. That's better for me.
Yeah.
And I feel it.
You got to find what works for you. I think just in my experience, like a lot of people are dismissive of meditation because they think, oh, I did it and I didn't see a floating green fireball that, changed my life or whatever. And it's not, if you go into it looking for something, it's the opposite. You go in there not looking for something.
Well, and that's, honestly, that's like people though with physical activity too. It's like, well, I worked out for a week and it's really, I don't see the difference or feel the difference. Like,
or physical therapy. I went
twice
because you had a thing and like you expect, like people expect immediate results.
It's consistency.
This is right. To me, it's a practice, like if it becomes, and I think that to me, like my answer to like self-care would be my morning routine. That's like, I have a morning routine. I actually was out of it when we were away.
Sure.
Which, you're away, you're working somewhere else. It's, it's different to begin with, but I'm so happy to get back into my morning routine.
I know.
There's a couple things. So I do the meditation, I do breath work once a week. I used to do everything every day and it's time consuming. And so I don't have, so I've found myself a little balance. I do and I do like a gratitude journal once a week, which I also used to do every day. And it just became like a burden. And so I think you find
balance,
the balance, but giving myself that time to like, I'm going to do this thing first in the morning. I'm not going to, before I'm checking email, before I'm like reading the news or anything like that,
stay away from the news.
Taking care of myself first. It's literally the the oxygen mask, putting the oxygen mask on myself before the other person.
Yeah, I've been waking up super early for a long time, and I love being up that early. I just love being out. If I'm going for a run, whether I'm going for a run or I'm getting on the bike or exercising that day, different exercise, whatever. But if I'm outside, like it's dark. There's nobody out. I love getting that done and getting yes, you feel good, but just feeling so accomplished so early in the day is just I love it.
I wish I had found that. I have it now. I wish I had found that earlier in life to coincide like with the kids. When the kids, because they would go to sleep early when they were young. They go to sleep early, but then they wake up early. And what we would do is get them to bed. And then it's like, you're on vacation
or take
for
turns.
a couple of hours.
Or take turns, right? Like you would get up or LA would get up or whatever it was and you'd say sleeping. Yeah, no, use that as an opportunity.
No, we wouldn't take turns. It's like each of you is pretending to sleep through the baby crying. And like who was waking up.
I did start when my older kids were young. I started doing the long distance running in the triathlon. So I was starting to get up a little early, but no, certainly not. And then when Hayden was born, I was already doing it. But
some of the other things.
Some of the other things. Yeah, go ahead.
Heard some folks, like quite a few are in therapy, like doing therapy which I think is fantastic.
Yep.
And to me, it's
the stigma.
There's so many different, there's so many different forms of therapy. I mean, you can talk to a therapy now, a lot of virtual, but also like, to me, like my journaling or practice or meditation is my therapy. And yours, like the walking.
Yep.
People, there are quite a few people who are readers, TV shows, movies. There's so many things. Like I think we heard a lot people talking about escaping, like not escaping, but turning it off.
But that's okay.
One of the best ways is watching a movie or getting into stuff. Because like I love watching movies for that reason. For those 2 hours, I'm in another world.
Yeah.
And I really like that.
Yeah.
And it's like these are all sort of slight examples of the same thing. When I'm swimming, I am focused on my stroke, and breathing in the water.
Yeah, you're not thinking about, oh my God, I got this hearing or I have this call.
Present. It's about being present. It's like the thing that I've heard that like we should try to emulate is the moment, and I know you're going to relate to this, the moment you get home and you greet your dog. Like that moment when you're greeting your dog and you're just totally loving on that dog and that dog is totally loving on you. Like we need to try to take those moments and translate them into our, to our lives more and gives ourselves that focus on one thing, whatever it may be, a book, an exercise, whatever.
Yeah. Being present for sure. Yeah. Reading, is also something that I've come to that I obviously did it younger but we read so much. I didn't do it as a young lawyer, young dad, doing it much more now, and trying to find different books or different magazines or different articles online, and just trying to stuff other than what we deal with every day.
Yeah, I love learning. The thing that I really have been bad about is fiction. I haven't read fiction in the longest time.
Yeah, me either.
So much nonfiction because I just want to learn something new. I love learning. I just can't, get enough of learning.
I know, and that's like Lauren mostly reads fiction, although she reads some nonfiction, but mostly fiction.
I think it's important for us to read fiction.
I agree. I'd like to find something. Somebody
recommended a book. Was it the Midnight Library?
Midnight Library, that was yesterday.
Right. I'm going to get that one.
That was yesterday, yeah.
Anyway, so we made it through. We only talked about one of the topics, but we'll come back for another one. I think this topic is
this is a big topic.
Yeah,
it takes on its own. It's important to find what is helpful to you.
Yeah.
And not say, oh, well, someone else does this, and so I'll try it. Yeah, you could try it, but it may not work for you. Yeah. So you have to find what works for you, look, I'm always going to tout physical activity, whether any kind of movement. I don't care what you're doing. You should be moving. Yeah. But there's also some component of the mental. And the physical will help with the mental, but there may be some other things. And so try to find something or things that you can do outside of work that will help. You will be a better person, lawyer, husband, wife, brother, sister, son, daughter, parent, whatever, and you'll just be better for it if you take care of yourself.
You hit on another one that is the importance of rich social relationships, like socializing with people, because we do have that tendency as lawyers, like you're in yourself, you're busy, you're working late, you get home, you don't talk, you're just kind of too tired to, call a friend or whatever it is, or you're too busy or whatever. And so I can't underestimate the value of
social relationships are huge. Yeah, meaningful, deep relationships.
Diet, exercise, sleep, deep social relationships. Yeah. I'm sure there's more, but
I think that's good for now. Thank you, Jeffrey. This is enlightening.
I feel better. Do you feel better, Nelson?
He's shaking.
Also
his head,
a runner, big time runner. This guy is a big time runner. Nelson, thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, please
Thank you, Nelson. Thank you, Jeffrey.
subscribe to the show, leave us a 5-star review, and share the show. Send a link. You can send a link from wherever you listen to your podcast.
Use this for your self-help and
Copy
self-care.
that link into a text to somebody you love right now and say, hey, you should listen to this. It's really good. If you think so. I think so.
I think so too.
Well, anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
For more information on this show and other resources, visit fastamron.com and connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram @fastamron.